Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Before the 90 days, the couple's tell-all. Let's watch.
So cute. You're gorgeous. Oh, my God.
So are you.
And I love my man, but you're gorgeous.
A lot of the guys are not standing up to their women, and they're allowing them to cross their personal boundaries of human dignity. I just want to know if they're like willing to stand for themselves. It's going to be interesting.
Okay, it's hard to know what he means by that, but I'm going to rewind that again because I feel like I want to hear what he said again. But a lot of the men are not standing up to their women. Okay. Sometimes it's just the way you're taught to talk, but that phrasing, it alerts something inside of me when I hear it. I'm like, ugh, their women. It's possessive, right? We don't know if he is particularly sexist or misogynistic, or paternalistic. And then the premise behind what he's saying is, you need to stand up to the women. It'd be different if he said, well, there are some people I feel they don't stand up for themselves. Okay, that's a different framing, right? It's not gender-based. You're just saying some people, and then if you inquired, he might say, well, they just happen to be a lot of the guys that I saw on the show, but that doesn't really, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I just think some of those individuals, regardless of gender, they just don't stand up for themselves. That to me wouldn't alert me to an underlying foundation of misogyny, sexism, assumptions about, where people of particular genders are supposed to be in terms of dominance and submissiveness. But let's rewind.
So are you.
And I love my man, but you're gorgeous.
A lot of the guys are not standing up to their women, and they're allowing them to cross their personal boundaries of human dignity. I just want to know if they're like willing to stand for themselves. It's going to be interesting.
And of course, when you add all the ticks in the column that seem to be hovering around the notion that he is interested in power and interested in dominance, and for often because when people do that, when people are really focused on dominance and power, and they'll involve in gender power notions, it's often because when they were young, one, they were taught a misogynistic, male dominant, male superior society, and they feel like that's what they're supposed to do to be a proper human or a proper man. But also, if you're made to feel inferior, you're much more aware of feelings of powerlessness and are frequently trying to assert power. I don't have any traumas regarding that for whatever reason in my family. I mean, I'm sure I have like minor, I had 3 siblings, so, and I was, one of the younger kids. So there was certainly a pecking order in our family, but my parents were loving and attuned and stable enough such that all of us kids, I think, felt loved and secure and had enough age-appropriate power such that I don't really have that complex. And so when I hear people talking about, betas and alphas and, simps and being pee-whipped and, all this kind of talk, it just has never resonated with me. I'm always just kind of like, okay, why do you see the world that way? For some people, it's an obsession, especially in some corners of the internet. There's just this constant talk of alpha and beta, and I think there's an omega in there somewhere. It's like, can't you just like live your life? And what's wrong with like temporarily not having any power? You go on a first date and you're heterosexual and you're a guy, and your date, the woman wants to pay for dinner, or she wants to decide where you're going to go after dinner or something. And it's like, why not just be, oh, okay, well, she wants to do something. Why it's always kind of framed, and it's like, oh, she's asserting herself, or she's complaining about me right now. I have to assert dominance and establish the fact that I'm in control and that I'm not the beta in the situation. Whenever you hear that language, it, one, should alert you to sexism and power dominance issues and problems, but also underlying that, you could assume with some degree of accuracy that the person has been made to feel powerless and inferior, and so they're really trying to compensate for that. And if any of you have that kind of focus, the cure is not to be dominant. The cure is to heal from the relational traumas that made you feel inferior and made you feel powerless. You know, those traumas are real. When you're abused, when you're ignored, when you're criticized and put down and abandoned, or whatever it is that you just felt like you had no control. You know, often alcoholism can create that. If that was your role in the family, was to just kind of slink away, you can just feel really powerless. And that's real. Those traumas are real. But to constantly focus on dominance and trying to avoid inferiority, it just plays into that trauma, and you will frequently fail at your efforts to be dominant, and because of the black and white thinking, you can re-traumatize yourself because you frame everything in terms of dominance and submissiveness, and then suddenly you're not dominant. So black and white thinking, oh, I'm submissive, I'm being overpowered, when in reality someone else is just leading the way, or you're just not dominant. Maybe you're having equal power. And also, obviously, in romantic relationships, you're going to experience a lot of strife. You're going to push people away. Other people generally don't like to be dominated constantly. And so it will not serve you, is the point. So becoming aware of that, one, and trying to not engage in those impulses, that's short term. And then long term is to really start to process and recover from those experiences that gave you that schema of powerlessness to begin with.
For going over there and following my heart, which is crazy to me because that's what I should have done, you know?
You seem to come on pretty strong from what I saw.
I went for what I wanted.
Well, like, okay, guys are, I'm going to stereotype now, so I'm going to get in trouble.
Okay.
We as men are the predators. We are lions looking for gazelles. And you're kind of hoping that it's a bit of a race.
Wait, what? Oh, no. You know, it's interesting because in different contexts, the cast members will reveal different aspects of themselves. When they're on the regular part of the show, the things they reveal to the camera, the things that come up, the things that are triggered, the way that they're edited, we never heard this stuff, but we've already, before the tell-all is really in full swing, we've already heard two things from Ben that are in a particular category. I don't know how Ben really feels about this, but you know, he said men need to stand up to their women, and now he's like, you know, I'm going to stereotype a little bit, so he sort of knows it's always funny when people do that. It's like, okay, you know what, maybe this is stereotypical, but men are this way and women are that way. Just like, when people are like, look, no offense, but you're an a-hole. Just by having a caveat that at the beginning doesn't negate the fact, and it also points to the fact that you're doing it. So stop. Like, anyway, so he says, look, I'm going to be stereotypical, but men are lions and women are gazelles. Yikes. No, they're not. Now, again, if he said something like, some people, no, even that, no. No one are lions and no one are gazelles. So it's obvious the underpinnings of that metaphor. Men are dominant, women are not. Men are predators and women are prey. That colors a great deal of the entire season with Ben and Mahogany, does it not?
You don't want it to just like lay down. It's like, well, that wasn't fun. So, like, if a gazelle ever attacked me, I wouldn't know what to do.
I don't even know what to say. If a gazelle attacked me, I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, maybe I should just let that one go because I don't know what he means. But let's rewind that because this is... Now, if I didn't know Ben and he was just some random person talking, I'd be like, oh... I mean, this reminds me of Ash. Remember that whole thing when he was giving the... But let's rewind this.
Crazy to me because that's what I should have done, You
seem to come on pretty strong from what I saw.
I went for what I wanted.
Well, like, okay, guys are... I'm going to stereotype now, so I'm going to get in trouble.
Okay. We
as men are the predators.
Oh, I see. So his point is that he is trying to help Kim by giving this metaphor. And I think what he's trying to say to her is, you have to play hard to get. Okay, That's not a great, I don't love that advice, but at least it's not framed in predator language. All he would have to say to Kim is, I think you're coming all strong to Usman, and I think you might have pushed him away a little bit. And so just a little advice, slow down, allow him to come to you, because I think he does like you, and people don't like pressure that much. Okay, actually that wouldn't be terrible advice. But one, it's framed in this misogynistic, horrible language. I mean, there's misogyny, and then there's lion gazelle metaphor, which is like predatory language. It's like, no. And two, it is in that vein that he typically is operating, where it's about parables. I grew up pretty heavily Christian, and there was a lot of Bible study and New Testament study, and there's, Jesus talked in a lot of parables. And I think that he might be influenced by that. 3, which is, neither here nor there. Number 3 is he, I think, has a low-grade narcissism. I don't know. And not the way the internet talks about narcissism, but I specialize in people with narcissistic personality disorder, and I can tell you that when I say narcissism, it is not probably what you think of narcissism, because the internet almost universally does not understand narcissistic personality disorder. They might understand narcissism or self-centeredness, meaning that you look at someone like your ex-boyfriend and you're like, he was so self-centered, he was so narcissistic. Okay, I mean, it's not a clinical label, it's just an opinion that you have. But the personality disorder, and really every personality disorder, the internet barely understands. I've been studying personality disorders and specializing in them for 25 years. I recently became more familiar with one of the personality disorders, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which I did a deep dive on recently. And 25 years into my career, felt like I finally understood it for the very first time, even though I've been treating people with it. And in that discovery, discovered I have it. I have a mild version of obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And it explains so much about myself. Anyway, listen to all my deep dives on that recently. It was very interesting for me personally, and for a lot of the listeners, because they're like, oh, I think that's me too. Anyway, so I think with Ben, either due to early childhood trauma, neglect, or that he was denied the ability to grow up. Sometimes when you're denied the ability to develop psychologically, you retain earlier functions. And when you're very young, it's natural to be narcissistic. It's natural to, like when a 4-year-old goes, I'm the fastest runner in the world, and, proceeds to run slower than, a 7-year-old. You don't say, you're narcissistic, you're grandiose, what's wrong? You're just like, well, you're 4. You have so little self-esteem and so little self-awareness, and you're so focused on yourself, and it feels like you're running fast. You're like, whoa, I'm running so fast. You're like, I'm like the Flash, I'm running, and you literally believe it, and you're kind of a fantastical thinker. But we don't look at a kid and say, what's wrong with you? You're just like, well, it's 4. Well, if you are denied the ability to develop past that, for example, you're in a cult, then you might still retain that fantasy and that orientation toward the self, and not aware of how you fit in the world, right? A 4-year-old doesn't really all the time understand that although they can run, they're very, very slow. Although it feels like they're running fast, if they were, it's hard for them to look from the outside at themselves. They're very, inward. So what I'm saying about Ben is that there's a certain grandiosity to the way that he talks about things. It's hard for me to gauge this, of course, because I have so little data to go on, but there are some things in this column, and I feel like I should mention them. Like that train metaphor that he texted to Mahogany. In and of itself, it's not an indication of anything of note, but you take that and you take this gazelle lion thing, you take the way that he talks about like my love is, God is giving me this thing, as if God doesn't have better things to do. I mean, some people's religion is just like God has enough omnipotence that he can literally pay attention to every living creature constantly. So, it's fine. But there's a way that he languages his experience that is a tiny little yellow flag of that version of narcissism that I'm talking about, where everything that you experience is the best thing that's ever happened. My love for, he said, my love for Mahogany, our love for each other is the best thing that's ever happened. The other thing that you can do is if you suffer from this problem, and it's a suffering, it doesn't do well for one, and they have these defenses of narcissism in response to deep feelings of inferiority and nothingness. And so you might, it's a tiny little yellow flag. If you're an older male, try to find a partner that other people, if they see you together with her, then it looks like you're youthful and attractive by association, and you're looking for an image, and you're concerned about how that's going to look to the outside, rather than really focusing on compatibility and appropriateness of the partner and all that kind of stuff. So please do not think that I'm diagnosing him. Do not think that I'm associating Ben with the internet version of narcissism. It's a very loose hypothesis, but the reason why I bring this up is because I know a lot of you actually will have this condition, and some of you have contacted me, but given the prevalence of these kinds of injuries that result in narcissism, you can benefit by me talking about this, because you might be like, oh, that actually kind of sounds like me. And with therapy, with a specialist in narcissistic personality disorder, you can actually recover. You can actually learn how to, in the moment, overcome the impulses of narcissism, and also get your needs met in more fundamental, enriching ways, such that you don't need the defense of narcissism to defend against a feeling of nothingness. Anyway.
We are lions looking for gazelles. And you're kind of hoping that it's a bit of a race. You don't want it to just lay down. It's like, well, that wasn't fun. So
again, the languaging, when you just think about him and Ben, or him and Mahogany, it's like you don't want her to lay down, and then it gives it so much more context, like that he sees the world this way. Because if this is how he sees the world, then he absolutely succeeded in creating a lion chasing the gazelle scenario by pursuing someone that gave every signal that she, especially when he was improved, was not into him. So for him, that's the ideal, which if I were his friend or therapist, I would say, I would not idealize that. How about let's get away from, the African savanna and predatory prey relationship. Let's think about your needs and the other person's needs. How about both people pursue each other? Both people want to be with the other person. How does that feel to you? And what if someone just, like Kim, was really into you? And it makes me think, why would he not want that? Is it that it doesn't fit into his schema of gender, seemingly? It makes women look, because the thinking, I don't know for Ben, but it often is that women need to be pure, and they need to be virginal. They need to be not aggressive, not like men. They need to submit once they've been caught, sort of a thing. They need to be like, the Madonna, right? Madonna whore syndrome problem. And that's what God wants. That's what is right for gender. That's what I learned from my parents or from the cult. I mean, you got to wonder, actually, he said he was in a cult, right? I think he used that word. Often in cults, we don't know the one he was in, or shall we say highly coercive religious organizations and isolating religious organizations. There often is a traditionalist notion, not always, but often is. And there's often a power play, because the charismatic leader often is a male, almost always a male, who benefits from gender politics and misogyny that allows them to basically gain control over half the congregation. And, if you can just invoke like this traditionalist notion and half of the congregation is now basically, possessions of the other half, and you, because you're the charismatic leader, you have now established this clear control over them. And of course, you can get your, sexual needs, in these cults, often the charismatic leader starts having sex with everyone. So, and they will often emasculate. There's often a misogyny that is against the men as well, that they will say, you need to let me have sex with your wife, and then that disempowers the men as well. Anyway, point is that I have no idea what sort of cult he was in, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has been indoctrinated into that thinking. That if a woman likes you and wants to be with you, it indicates that she is she's not pure, and therefore is tainted and disgusting, and I don't want to be with you, or not godly. All this is just ridiculous. Now, having said that, there's a lot of talk in culture around playing hard to get, and I've been actually reacting to TikTok videos and discovering that psychology TikTok videos, and I've discovered that a good portion of them have this notion, because there's a lot of TikTok videos about like how to meet someone, how to get a date, how to have sex with someone, and a portion of those are you have to play hard to get, and there's all this gamemanship involved in that. And, it's a really complicated issue. I think in the extreme, it's true that if you come on super strong, even if the person you're pursuing likes you, it feels pressuring, and it provokes this paradox for the person being pursued, where they want to be with you, but they also feel claustrophobic. They feel pressured. They feel like they're moving too fast. And that creates this paradox in their mind where they want to be with you, but they also want to run away. And if you create that feeling in the person you're pursuing for too long, eventually they break and they're just get me out of here. So, but not everyone. Some people actually really love to be pursued, and they actually will respond even if you pursue really hard. So it's not a universal thing. But when you pursue hard and you don't wait for the other person you don't give them some space to chase you occasionally, you create a scenario where you might actually create that paradox in the person that you're pursuing. So that's true. But this notion that universally you should always play hard to get, and that women are supposed to play hard to get, is like, I don't recommend that way of thinking. Ben, you should understand now that way of thinking that you clearly set up with Mahogany did not function well.
Like, if a gazelle ever attacked me, I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, to me, it's just a turnoff. But if Usman likes that sort of thing, all the power to him. But he seemed like he didn't.
Right, so he's trying to help Kim by telling her to slow down. And I don't know if it's true. I don't know if Usman actually was turned off by that. He responded, I mean, you could say overall, when she would get upset, he didn't like that. But she kept pressuring him to sleep there, to have sex, and eventually he was like, cool. And it's hard to know what's going on in his mind, but his demeanor was that he was consenting, and although maybe moving a little faster than he had originally thought, it seemed as though that was in his plan. Maybe he just moved the date a week earlier or something. It kind of had that feel to it. So was it a bad strategy for Kim to pursue? That's not how I would characterize it. The other thing that I'll say is I see on TikTok and in culture that when people are not succeeding at meeting someone, a companion, or having romantic things in their life, romantic times, there's this notion that starts to creep in, and there's a lot of advice on the internet that you should have a strategy. I recommend your strategy is to not focus on having a strategy. Like, you should be self-aware, and you should know how you're coming across to other people. And if you're desperate and not considering the other person's feelings and just pursuing because you're so focused on your own needs, that can be very alienating to someone. Yeah, you should understand it. But I don't recommend like trying to, because 100,000 years ago when we were on the African Pleistocene savanna, and we didn't probably have strategies. There wasn't an internet or TikTok telling us like how to game coupling with other people. When two people like each other, if you get a lot of the crap out of the way, they will fall in love and couple, because that's what we want to do. Most of us, we evolved to procreate, and and raise children. A part of procreating and raising children that don't get eaten by lions is coupling, is to bond, is to, oh my God, I want to be with you. I want to have sex with you. I want to see you all the time. I don't want you to be with anyone else, not always. But point is I don't recommend having a strategy. Like, things to get out of the way are notions of lions and gazelles. Like, that would interfere with coupling, in my opinion. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.